Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us at this Your Overseas Home webinar. My name is Christopher Nye, and I'm Senior Content Editor at Your Overseas Home and also Spain Property Guides. Today, we are chatting all things legal with Emma Belgum, a paralegal at JLCA Lawyers, normally in Alicante, but I believe over in the UK for a flying visit. And we're going to be talking about buying safely in Spain, that is the legal processes, but also talking about residency. So everything legal. So it's great to have so many of you here today, whether you're watching live or on demand. And Emma's going to have a presentation for us, but perhaps you could just say hi, Emma, and just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about JLCA.
Of course, thanks very much, Chris. Well, basically, JLCA Lawyers, we're a Spanish legal firm. We've been established for over 20 years, actually more than 25 years now. We practice only Spanish law, but we have offices in Spain, the UK, which is where I am today, and also in the US. We're a multilingual firm. We do believe very strongly that it's important not just to be able to translate the information for clients, but to make sure to interpret it in a way that they understand. So because of that, there's a lot of people like myself, which actually come from those countries originally, so to help you along the way. We are also a multidisciplinary firm. We don't just cover extrajudicial work, although that is obviously what we do specialize in. We also have full civil and criminal departments, so we're able to manage any matter that somebody might have while they're in Spain.
Okay, fantastic. Now, if you have any questions, do please click on the questions tab on the right-hand side and throw them in, and we will answer as many as we can. So yeah, we're focusing on the legal aspects. So perhaps, Emma, you can tell us what we need to know.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just try to give a bit of a general overview. Obviously, if there's specific questions, then we can try and address more deeply. But the most important thing is that we do always say it's really important that you use an independent lawyer when you purchase in Spain, for the obvious reasons that when you're buying from an estate agent or a developer, although they may be wonderful people, they won't necessarily have your interests at heart because there's other parts involved. When you have an independent lawyer, or we're interested in making sure that everything is 100% right and the best options for you. Now, it's important to understand there's a lot of differences in the buying process compared to the UK when you're in Spain. A lot of things which will seem quite different. To start off with, the most important thing is the early negotiation. There's not much difference. You find property, you're looking at it, you'd like to make an offer, and that offer gets accepted. That's the pretty typical thing. But from there, it starts to move away a little bit differently. Now, typically, you would be then looking to make a reservation contract deposit. This is solely to take the property off of the market, show that you're a serious buyer, to confirm the offer that you have made, and that gives you then time to move along to the next contract stage. Now, a reservation contract is typically 3,000 to 6,000 euros. On a higher price property, sometimes a little bit more, but as a rule, 3,000 to 6,000. Once you've gone past this stage, and this is where it's so important to have your lawyers involved, you'll then be moving towards the private purchase contract. Now, that is absolutely fundamental because that has all of the clauses which are binding to notary. So while we're checking the documentation, making sure that everything's in order, there aren't encumbrances, there isn't a problem potentially with the property, we can, if anything isn't provided, we can actually put those provisos in the contract to make sure that you can pull out and get your money back if there is an issue. We will then move forward to the final part, which is signing notary. All properties are signed before a public notary in Spain. It's also important to think about why you are purchasing, because those will have implications as well. As there's some that would be looking for a holiday home, some are looking for investment, others might be looking at a home for residency in Spain. And depending on which of those reasons, there's different things for you to take into consideration and different paperwork we might want to have a look at. For example, if you're thinking about a holiday rental, then we want to make sure that you've got the right tourist licenses in place to enable you to do that. If it's residency, then we need to talk about those options with you. The only other thing I wanted to mention is NIE numbers. NIE numbers are required in Spain when you're purchasing a property. It's effectively like your national insurance number in the UK. It's a fiscal reference, and there's no problem with applying and obtaining that. We can help you do that. You can do it via the Spanish consulate in the UK, but it will be required before you sign the final signing at the notary. Okay. Now, very, very briefly, obviously, if we move across to residency, things have changed since Brexit. You are now bound by the 90 and 180 days rule. I think people have kind of got their heads around this now, but just to recap, it means that when you first come to Spain, you start a clock of 180 days, and within that 180 days, you have 90 days in which you can spend in Spain, whether it's some of it, all together, at some at the start, some at the end, it doesn't matter. But once you've run out of that 90, or the 180 day starts, you then need to go on to the next one. Residency types themselves, it all depends on what you are planning to do in Spain. The most common that we deal with is probably the non-lucrative visa, and this is aimed at people that are retiring to Spain, early retirement, or perhaps planning to live off either pensions or investments, but investment funds that they have. It allows you to reside in Spain. You need to be in Spain for a minimum of 183 days, but you aren't able to work. Now, more recently, we've got the digital nomad. This is based on the idea of people being able to remotely work in Spain, which means you can't work for a Spanish company, or more than 20% of the work coming from that. It needs to be from the UK, for example, but you can do that from your base in Spain, living here as a resident. There are a couple of different types of work visas, either based on an offer that you have to come across to Spain to work in a specific company, which is processed with the company, or self-employed, with the idea of providing a business plan detailing what business that you would want to set up in Spain, how it will be funded, for approval for the visa. And then the last visa I'd like to sort of mention would be the golden visa. This is a very interesting visa for people that are thinking in terms of residency here, if they are wondering whether they do or don't want to be fiscally resident in Spain. The advantage of the golden visa is that if you spend less than 183 days in Spain, you still have Spanish residency, you still have all the rights in Europe, but you don't actually become fiscally resident, so you can remain that in the UK. I think I've rattled off rather a lot of information in a short amount of time. Chris, if you've got any particular questions that you might like to start with, we can go into more depth.
We certainly have. I'm just gonna plow into a question that leads on to another question. So for Carol, residency options, non-lucrative visa, what are the income requirements?
Okay, the income requirements are for the applicant. It's based on 400% of IPREM. At this year, that comes out at 28,800 for the applicant, and a further 7,200 for the any additional members that are added to the visa. It is important to understand the funds that you need to show. It could be savings, it can be investments and income from pensions or property lettings in the UK, for example, or a mixture, but it needs to arrive at the minimum of 28,800. But it is also important to take into consideration when you renew in Spain in 2 years, you'll need to show not exactly double, but around about double for those 2 years. That doesn't mean necessarily you suddenly have to have twice as much money in your pocket to do the renewal. For example, if part of that is based on your pensions, then that is understood as being over 2 years. So that is already double. But the basis that you need to think about in terms of the single amount for the year is 28,800 for the applicant.
Brilliant. It's a question that comes up every time, and every time I hope you're going to say it's a smaller amount, because it seems such a lot of money. But you can make it out from all sorts of different ways, as you point out. But just on that subject, okay, so if I'm buying a property in Spain for the retirement I've dreamt of for the last 20 years, how do I know that I'm going to be able to go and live in it? I don't want to buy it and then find out I can't live in it. So do we get that visa first? Or do you buy the property first?
As I say, it really is up to the person. As far as the visas themselves, they're not looking for reasons to refuse non-lucrative visas. It's a benefit to Spain to have people living in Spain that way, because they're contributing to the system, they'll be paying income tax, and they're using the facilities and contributing here. So as I say, it's not something that they're looking to deny. So if you know that you're going to be able to fulfill the requirements, there's no reason to think that you wouldn't get the residency. On the other hand, if you would prefer to come to Spain first, there's absolutely no problem with coming to Spain and renting here. All you need to think about is having somewhere that you're actually physically going to be living, an actual address, because obviously the basis of that wouldn't be on just arriving and sitting at a hotel. But so you just need somewhere to base yourself from. One very important thing I do think is important to mention, as it causes some confusion: the non-lucrative visa is always applied for from the country of origin, which would be the UK. Now, lots of planning can be done beforehand to make sure all the paperwork is together and correct as it needs to be, ready for your appointment, and we offer services to help with that. But what you do need to remember is, at that point, you will be submitting your passport with your application. So you will need to be in the UK and staying in the UK while you're waiting for your application to be approved. Now, this should only take about a month. It can take longer, it can take shorter, depending on the consulate at the time. But you will be without your passport, so you will need somewhere to stay in the UK for that interim. It's not a case that you can sort of come back to the UK, do your application, and go back. You are remaining in the UK for the whole duration of the approval period.
Okay, great. So just to confirm, Carol has asked if it's pounds or euros. It's euros. It's 28,000 euros, 800 euros. Yep. Annette has asked, can you retire to Spain and rent out a property in Spain for that income?
You can rent a property out in Spain, but it can't be counted towards your income.
Okay.
It has to be, for the negative, it has to be external, not generated from Spain. But do remember as well, we're only talking about for the first 5 years. Once you reach long-term residency, then all of those rules relax, and you don't have to show that same amount. It's just for the first application, the 2 renewals, and then you go into long-term residency.
Okay, let's have a think about the buying process once again. Now, I can imagine buying in Spain and an estate agent saying, "Oh, you don't need a lawyer. The notary does all that." So, could you explain what a notary does and what we would say to an estate agent that said we don't need a lawyer?
The notary will look at all of the paperwork that is provided and has to the registry notes to make sure that everything is correct and it is signed in a legal way. Your lawyer, on the other hand, is going to be checking the two Spanish registries, Cadastral and the main registry office. We'll be checking for encumbrances. We'll be looking for any other discrepancies between those that the owners are who they say that they are. We will be contacting the local town hall to make sure that there's no infractions against it. If you have specific questions about what you can and can't do with the property, then we will be able to advise you about it. So we're doing an awful lot more. The notary is very important, and they are highly qualified at doing what they're doing, but they're not going to be able to provide all of that information and support, and certainly not in English necessarily to the level that somebody of a native would be able to do.
Okay. So I suppose the question a lot of people will be wondering is, how long will it take for the entire buying process to go through, and roughly what should we allow on top of the property price for all the expenses?
In terms of how long it takes, there's certainly no issue with completing in a month and a half, 2 months, as a typical amount. It all depends on the paperwork, what the property is, and also the agreements between the buyers and sellers as to how they want to do that. In terms of costs, I think I'm sort of quite famous on here already. I don't like to give percentages. I prefer to talk specifics about people's situation, because it does vary in what you're trying to do. But depending on which autonomous region that you're purchasing on, the property tax varies. So here in, not here, where I would normally be in Alicante, the whole Comunidad Valenciana region, that is 10% of the purchase price. That's quite typical in quite a few of the regions. In Andalusia, it's lower at 7%, Murcia, it's 8%. But this is on top of the purchase price. You will then also have notary and registry fees, which are a function of the actual purchase price of the property. And then on top of that, your legal fees. In terms of getting a breakdown of the rough costs, I would always say to people to get in contact with us, tell us exactly what they're planning, where they're planning, and then we can give you a good breakdown. It's important as well, if you're thinking of purchasing with a Spanish mortgage, there are differences as well, because there's more work involved with the mortgage itself, but there are actually 2 signings when you have a mortgage. The deed is notarized, for one thing, but you since about 2021, you have to attend and sign for the mortgage conditions several weeks before you then sign for the purchase. So it's again building in this into your timescale. So it's important to discuss your situation and what you need to do for that.
Great. Okay. And so the time to contact you really is before you find the property, really as soon as you start looking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if somebody's already at that stage, and they need our help, then of course we dive in straight away and do everything to make sure it goes smoothly. But it's always better to plan ahead, because then you know exactly what you're planning to do. Because as I mentioned before, if it's for rentals, if it's for investment, if it's a holiday home, if it's for residency, there are different things to have into consideration building your timeline. And we do like to try and make sure that you fully understand the whole buying process before you come out here, so that when you actually do reach that point of making an offer, that you feel more comfortable and know exactly what you're doing or what comes next.
Okay. Now, I believe you don't need to be in Spain for all the processes. On the other hand, I've seen people physically shrink when you mention power of attorney. So just explain power of attorney and what it means in practice for if you're buying a property in Spain.
No, you're absolutely right there, Chris. The powers of attorney, in Spain, in order you can't just write a letter or authorize somebody to do something. Like you can do in the UK. Here, you have to have a formal power of attorney for somebody to act on your behalf. And it is really common for us as lawyers to have power of attorney for a purchase process. Now, the power of attorney that we provide is very specific to the purchase process. It doesn't give us access to people's bank accounts in the UK. We can't go and buy a property in their name or anything like that. We're just able to act on their behalf for their purchase. And as a legal firm, obviously confidentiality and respect of the client is fundamental. So every time that we are using it, we do actually inform the client so they understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. But it's very, very specific for the matter at hand. And for example, we can't manage an inheritance procedure with a power of attorney that we've done for a property purchase. The clauses aren't in there, and you do need specific clauses for anything that you do in Spain. These powers of attorney are designed specifically for banks and notaries, who are the ones that always require these in order to work on your behalf.
Okay, splendid. Now, okay, so some people want to open a business. Some people want to, for example, rentals, B&B, that kind of thing. Some want to do Airbnb. Can you? And some people want to do, for example, some changes on the property. So, how much can you advise people before they get too far into the buying process on if that's going to be possible, if that's not going to be possible? Can you help with those sorts of planning decisions and also renting out your property decisions?
No, absolutely. The fundamental point in terms of rentals is going to be whether it can get, if you're planning on Airbnb, for example, is the tourist license. It is very fundamental that you have that. Airbnb will ask you for that in order to do so. So first of all, when you're thinking in terms of that sort of a rental, you need to be thinking in terms of an area that is specifically set up for tourism. The permission to be able to do so is mostly, first of all, via your local town hall as to whether that area has any reason to be against it, and then your specifically community owners association for where you're buying, if there are any impediments as to why you're not able to rent. Now this could be because it's a rural area and everybody is working, so they don't want people coming in and out. But in a tourist area where it's really common to be having lots of people coming in and out, and the whole area is built that way, then yes, you will be able to get a tourist license. Now we can speak to both the Community Owners Association and with the local town hall to see what their reactions are and what the general feel is, or you may even find that it already has a tourist license and it just needs to be swapped to your name. But these sort of things we can check beforehand just to make sure.
Okay, excellent. Now we've had a whole bunch of questions that are more to do with the residency element. So let's talk about that. Kevin has asked if the 90-day rule starts from the start of the Spanish fiscal year, the 1st of January.
No, it starts, your 180 days that you take your 90 days from starts at your first trip in Spain, whenever that is during the year, and then it's a running clock after that. If you were to, for example, to come in March, you've then got 180 days from there in order to spend in Spain, and then at the end of that 90 days you would need to wait until the next 180 days to restart. You may restart that straight away, you may wait for 2 years and then restart it. So there's no specifics as to when. It's just a case of when the clock starts, that's when you need to look at the dates that you've got, and there are loads of online calculators to help you with that.
That's great. Okay, Beverly has asked, so if for a visa we have to apply in the UK, but we have to have an address in Spain?
This is more in terms of you're going to need somewhere that you're going to need to stay. That's less of an issue. It's just more of a case that you need to have someone, if you're planning to come across and live in Spain, and you're going to want to have someone to stay. Normally people would in advance of that arrange a rental of where they're going to be if they're planning to live there.
Okay. Okay, another question, and I hear you. What if I have a credit problem caused by previous debts that are now cleared? Does Tenerife allow people to live there with a dodgy credit history?
It's not something that it's not something that's really checked as part of the residency options. You've got to show that you are financially stable and have the means to be able to support yourself now. They're not interested in looking at what your previous credit history. I mean, you have a criminal history that you have to provide for the last 5 years also as part of your application. But again, there's been people with minor infractions of driving and such, but have still been able to go through without any problem. You just have to show that you have the financial means now, and you will be able to support that each time you do your renewal.
Okay. Okay, sure. On that subject, I mean, it's the kind of thing we hear on these kind of webinars, and then I think about the practicality. So what do I do? Do I pop down to the police station, or how does that sort of thing work?
Well, obtaining a criminal history.
Yes, yes.
It's it's a national police database. You can actually apply online.
Okay, excellent. Right, well, that's easy enough then. Okay, Helen has asked, will the funds I get from selling my UK property be sufficient for a non-lucrative visa if she's putting half towards buying a property in Spain? I guess.
Well, depends. I need to know what the figures are.
Depends how much your property is in. But so, I mean, so you're going to need something like at least €50,000 left in the bank to show for an individual, aren't you? Because you've got to show 2 years worth of.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, as I say, if you've got for the actual application itself, you need the 28.8, and depending on how many other people extra. For the renewal, you'll need to show that and also a demonstration of at least reasonably close to double. But that could be, for example, if they've got income like pensions or investments, you'll be able to use that as well. So it depends specifically on the circumstances. A very simple way of doing it is, yes, have double sat in your bank account and you don't have to think about it at all. And then once you get to the 5 years, you're not going to have that requirement anymore.
Okay. Beverly has said, we don't need a mortgage, but should we consider buying a property that states it is non-mortgage? I didn't know there was a thing, to be honest. But
no, there's I don't know that there is such a thing either.
Okay.
A property if it's got a mortgage on it, it's listed on the deed. If there's not, there is no mortgage on it, but then maybe in the future somebody could have a mortgage on it.
Okay. Well, do send us more details, Beverly, if we'd be interested in that one. Jim has asked. This is relevant, very relevant. Jim has said, we talk about 90 days in Spain, but how is this impacted by time in other EU/Schengen countries?
That's an excellent point. When I am saying Spain, I'm saying Spain because we're talking about Spain, but it's 90 days for the whole of the Schengen area in all of Europe.
Okay. Great. We're rattling through lots of questions here. So we have a question. Please clarify how much it will cost for a golden visa apart from the property price.
The requirements are actually exactly the same as the non-lucrative visa for the rest of the requirements.
So, you may have mentioned it, but how much should we be budgeting for actually getting that non-lucrative visa? Just the legal processes, and I appreciate, it could be different for different people, but are we talking thousands? I mean, I know that people who've moved to the UK complain about how much we charge them. It's a huge amount. I believe it's probably less in Spain.
Legal fees in general, I would say, we work on a fixed fee basis for a start. You're not charged per hour, and we do think the fees are reasonable. But when you're talking about these visa applications, you need to take into consideration as well. It's not legal fees that's necessarily the largest cost. You've actually got the physical fees of the visa itself. It's about, I think, £516 per person for the actual application for the non-lucrative visa. So from the point of view of whatever you're doing, let me know and I'll give you a breakdown of what you'll be looking at. What we'll say is, from speaking with our lawyers actually this week, talking about this double requirement and how important it is, it specifically seems to relate more to the non-lucrative visa. The golden visa isn't such a heavy requirement for the double because you've got the investment as well.
Okay, we have had a few people asking for clarification on some points. Could I suggest that you've got Emma's details there, so do contact Emma directly and talk about those things. In the meantime, rattling through more questions. For the digital nomad visa, do I need a work contract or from financial conditions similar to the non-lucrative visa? So what do I need to show for that nomad visa?
The digital nomad is very, very new. We've got the basis criteria, but things are less than settled at the moment. The actual it covers two areas. One of them is for somebody that's already employed and that you are able, as continuing as an employee on your existing contract, that you're able to do that teleworking completely. So that's one side. You can also have people that are self-employed or their own business. In terms of the actual amounts, it's very similar, a little bit less than the non-lucrative. I think it works out about €26,000 for the applicant, but there's reductions then for the second, third, and those onwards as to how much needs to be supported for them. So again, I would say because of how complex everything is in terms of the digital nomad, it's a good idea to talk to us specifically about your situation, because each of these at the moment are being dealt with very individually as to exactly what paperwork is needed.
Okay. We have actually run out of time. However, as we start a couple of minutes late, we'll go on a bit. Glenn has said, is it still €28,800 even if you're living somewhere cheaper inland? He's buying a cave house in Granada.
Makes absolutely no difference. It's the whole of Spain, the Canaries and the Balearic Islands. It's a set for the whole country.
However, your air conditioning and costs will be a lot less, Glenn. So there is that. Any more questions? I think there was one up here somewhere. How much investment is needed to start a business? That's
This is talking about work visas.
Yeah.
Again, it's not a set amount. They've got different percentages. It depends on the type of business that you are doing and how it's going to run in Spain. So there isn't just like a set criteria. You have to reach this amount, depending on the business type. I mean, you can have businesses that are with a really high turnover, or smaller businesses for startups like hairdressing salon or something like that, and they wouldn't come under the same criteria for that. It's more that you have to show that you've got sufficient to support the business that you are going to be running.
Okay. Glenn has come back with, so on this question of, because I realized that when we get into this sort of amount that you need to show, it becomes quite what can you allow, what can't you allow. So let's just work through his example. We estimate we intend to sell our UK property. He's going to have £150,000 to move out to Spain, and he's going to spend 70,000 on a property. So he's got 80,000 in the bank, with a £600 monthly private pension coming in. Would we be accepted for a non-lucrative visa?
Oh, that's way more, because if you're talking about if we're talking about a couple, for example, the total would be €36,000.
Yeah.
If you've got if you need to show the double, then you've got the pension income, which effectively is over the 2 years that you can include against that on top of it. So getting to the double of the, well, in that case, 60,000, a little bit less isn't going to be an issue. It shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, and Beverly's come back to say that the properties she was looking at that are non-mortgageable, some properties do state that they're non-mortgageable. Could that be park homes, maybe that kind of thing, possibly?
It could be the legality of the property. So, for example, there are many banks that will not offer a mortgage on a property if it hasn't got certain legal aspects covered, like the habitation certificate, second occupation license. So it could be something to do with the licensing of the property, the condition of the property, or that it's got other, like you say, maybe a mobile or caravan lease type property that has other conditions attached to it. And if she's looking at something specific, then please feel free to send me some links and I can have a look at and see if there's anything I can explain. But normally it's because a bank wouldn't accept it, or there's an actual condition with the land that it's on, or something like that, that wouldn't allow you to mortgage it.
Okay, I am just going to ask one last question because it's an interesting one. It's something that we hardly ever talk about. It's from Jennifer. It's all about finding work in Spain. I mean, I meet Spanish people in Britain all the time. They manage to find work here. How hard is it to find work in Spain? And how hard is it to get a visa once you got it?
Needs really. It depends on which type of work you're talking about. So first of all, if you're talking about the work visa that you want to find a job for first, then you would be talking about a company that is offering you a job that they have to demonstrate that job isn't something that you are specifically qualified for doing that job. You have particular qualifications and experience that make you ideal for that position, more than somebody that lives locally would be for doing that job. The other option, which is what tends to fit with people more, is if they can do the non-lucrative visa for a year, then after being a resident here for a year, if you were then to find locally full-time employment just through living there and gaining contacts, then you can apply by renewing for a work visa from Spain as a resident for the last year on the non-lucrative, which is a lot easier than actually doing the original work visa from the UK.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we really have run out of time now. Thank you, Emma, for all your really insightful tips and advice. We strongly recommend you get in touch with JLCA Lawyers directly to discuss your own requirements. As we've seen, it's when it's getting down into the details that's really helpful. Before we finish, if you'd like to leave us a review on Trustpilot, that would be really great. I believe there's a link coming up there now. Do join us for more webinars. We're talking about tax later today, back quite soon. But But thank you, Emma, and I hope we'll be speaking to you soon. And I do hope that our viewers will contact you directly. Thank you very
Thanks
much.
very much.
Cheers. Bye.